Today we're going to build a bot which is going to let us talk to our AWS account directly. To showcase, I want to list all the buckets running in my AWS account. So I'll list all my 3 buckets in my AWS account, and it will communicate with the API that we have made, and then it automatically figured out what commands to send to the API, and now it is running listing out all the S3 buckets. Now I want to list on storage used by one of the buckets. What is total storage used by bucket? Let's say this, right? So now again it will figure out that it has to talk to the API endpoint, and it will generate the queries by itself. It says there was some error, so probably it was not able to fetch the information. It will try to do it again, it will try to refactor it, and now let's see, it has generated this command that it has sent to the API endpoint, and there you go. So this much data is being used. So you can pass any other question. Again, it wants to specify region, so I'll say US East 1, and then it will again ask for confirmation, and let's go ahead. So here it has figured out the command to send, and it says there are no EKS clusters. So the bottom line is that you need a bot which runs in your AWS account and should be able to answer queries. Alright, so how is this bot built? Let's get inside the settings of the bot and try to understand. So if you get in here, you can see that there are some instructions that we're giving to the bot. Basically, we're telling the bot that based on the user request, generate API commands and then return the response that comes in from the user. We had to add a bit of cleaning here so that it generates the right command. Now, how does it understand what command to generate? That is done by passing an action. If you go inside the action, you can see that there's a OpenAPI spec provided there. This OpenAPI spec comes from the documentation. From the API documentation, essentially, if you go to openapi.json, this is the entire API spec. So we just need to copy paste the spec here and make a few changes there, basically. And you just have to add the server. Servers is something which won't come in that OpenAPI spec. So here it is. Now our formatting is correct. So this is based on the API spec. ChatGPT understands how to convert user request into what it has to send to the API endpoint. How about authentication? So for the authentication, you have to give an API key. Here you can paste the value of API key from the code. Awesome. So now we know how ChatGPT is going to convert user request into commands, basically API calls, and then API going to respond, and then ChatGPT is going to display the results. Let's quickly dive into the code as well. Nothing fancy in the code. We have this is the API endpoint. It takes command data as an input and then uses subprocess to run AWS CLI command and returns the result as an output. In the Docker image, we have installed the AWS CLI because eventually the command is going to be whatever command that has to be run will be run by AWS CLI. Now, how does it get access to the AWS account? Basically, since we're using AWS CLI, you can pass that environment variable in the deployment spec of your Kubernetes cluster. All right, we have our ChatGPT, we have our code, and ChatGPT is going to take input from the user, convert that into request, which the API can understand. Then API is going to convert to give the response, and ChatGPT is going to display it to the user. So that's about it. Thank you.